Okay, it's still Sunday the 11th of June 2023. I'm coming to the end of Winged Pharaoh, memory of Joan Grant. She died in 1989 and this book was published in 1937. It's been quite fascinating and I am continuing with, I think this is the next part, I think it's part 8. Part 8, Chapter 3. Den&Horem-Ka. The passing years brought beauty and strength as gifts to Den. Her hair shone like new copper, and her body was as slender as a young boy's. She used to go on expeditions to far countries searching for new animals and birds to bring back to calm, just as my father had searched for plants and trees. She was the pride and the fear of the master of chariots, for if danger stretched out his hands towards her, she laughed him into the shadows. She was beloved throughout the two lands, for whether she was with an old scholar or a young noble, a captain of captains or a hound boy, she made each feel that he was her equal, and that she had chosen him for her companion. Her anger was swift, but it was outpaced by her sympathy and her generosity. One of her favorite companions was Horem-Ka, son of the vizier of Isan. He was a captain of the royal bodyguard, and except when he was in attendance to Pharaoh, he lived on his own estate, which was near the royal city. He was a strong man both in heart and in body. His skin was red-brown with the sun, and his hands had the broad palms of a warrior. His brows were level as the wings of a hawk, but his mouth was the friend of laughter. Though there were many who loved her, when Den was 19 she had still not chosen her husband. One day news was brought that a lion, which was no longer swift enough to catch antelopes, had taken a child from one of the villages, 2 days' journey to the south of the royal city. Den went with Neyah upon the lion hunt, and she returned not in chariot as she had forth, but in a curtained litter. The wheel of her chariot had broken while she was challenging for the quarry, and she had been thrown out and kicked on the head by a following horse. For 4 days she lay as though she were dead. Only the faint beating of her heart showed that the silver cord was still unsevered. So slender was her hold on earth that it seemed that her spirit was like a bird that rustles its wings before its last flight. She breathed embalmed in sleep, and neither seer nor healer could stir her from this strange tranquillity. Her body was quiet as a statue as I watched beside her. Then I heard someone come into the anteroom, and the voice of Horem-Ka demanding to see my daughter. The servants told him that he must not enter, but he swept them aside, and they parted before him as reeds bowed before a great wind. The curtain of the doorway clattered on its rings as he pulled it back. The room was dark except for the dim light of one alabaster lamp, and I think he never knew that I was there. He knelt beside Den and held her hand, calling her by the little soft names that lovers use, and his voice followed her to those far lands when her spirit wandered, and her spirit heard his voice, and she returned to her body. She opened her eyes for a moment and smiled at him, murmuring his name contentedly as a drowsy child. Then in the shelter of his arms she slept, no longer in sleep in the semblance of death, but to the refreshing of her body. On the 3rd day of the 2nd month of the harvest, in the 24th year of my reign, Den and Horem-Ka were united before the gods. As Horem-Ka was not of the royal blood, he would not be Pharaoh, but only the royal husband, when Den came to the throne. Neyah announced him to be the first in the line of successions after Den. If she died before she bore an heir, for though Horem-Ka had not the blood of Menes in his veins, our tradition lived in his heart. He became the royal vizier, for Rehatep had grown weary of office, being 76 years of age. In the armies he ranked second only to Neyah, and in all save name he was the son of Pharaoh. He and Den together had the strength of the two sides of a pylon, and they were balanced each to like the two sides of the scales. Now that Den had found peace, which the beloved dweller in her heart had brought to her, she was no longer impatient of the ways of wisdom, and she listened to the voice of her memory, from which her knowledge of people had been born. Neyah gave her of his counsel, and in the voices of priests she found that joy that once she had found only in the swiftness of chariots. With Horem-Ka she travelled through Calm. They talked with the viziers, and they went among the people in the marketplaces. They talked with priests and temple councillors, with vintagers, and with women gathering in the harvest, so that our people knew that when the crook and the flail passed into the hands, they were the same ones that Neyah and I now held, and the contentment of their lives would be unbroken by our death. Nearly 2 years after their marriage, a son was born to them, and Den asked me to choose a name for him. And to my grandson I gave the name Sheshet-Ka, after him who was the son of my heart, though his body had been fashioned by Neyah and Sesket. Chapter 4 of Part 8. The Death of Neyah. When I had been on earth 46 years, the sun no longer rose over the horizons of my days, and sorrow hid the stars from my sight. For Neyah, who had gone upon a journey far to the south of Calm, died of the fever of the swamps. He told me in a dream that his body was ill, 27 days' swift journey from the royal city, and he told me that I could not reach him upon earth, for within 2 days his body would be an empty house. Away from earth death is a rejoicing, but to waking eyes it shadows beauty. Flowers lose their perfume, and the singing birds are dumb. Yet although all the people of Calm could show their sorrow, in my eyes the tears must burn unshed. For to my people I must speak of the littleness of death. Tell them that they should rejoice that their Pharaoh drove his chariot in the golden army of Horus. Tell them that he had gone ahead of them and waited to greet them when they, too, should die. Neyah was their shepherd and the avenger of their wrongs, and they loved him as they loved their gods. For to all of them Pharaoh was the symbol of what one day they would become. But to me Neyah was the little boy I played with when I too was little. The one with whom I had always shared the secrets of my heart, the one whom my tongue could be unguarded and my heart unwalled. And I was so very lonely. Chapter 5. The evening of my days. For a year after Neyah's death, I stayed in the royal city, and Den and I ruled over the two lands. My little grandson was dear to me, and I would tell him the stories that Neyah used to tell me of the scarlet fish and of the onyx who challenged the north wind to race to the horizon, of the monkey who wanted to be a man, and of the tortoise who was proud. With him I relived the days of my youth, and I thought of how, when he grew older, I should tell him legends of the gods and of the young in heart who lived upon earth through the old years. My spirit still watched over my country, and I saw the land spread out below me as though I were poised above it like a hawk. Where the water channels ran not freely, though the crops were still green to the eyes of men, I saw it as a desert. When there were speakers of evil to the people, I saw it as though there were a great cloud of flies. Where there were those who opposed their servants or their animals, I saw blood over the lintels of their doors, and about the houses of those who would destroy their fellow men. I saw not shaded trees, but skeletons springing from the ground along their path, for they walked in the shadow of death. And when I saw those things that were not well in our country, I would tell of them to Den, so that although her own lotus was but an opening bud, she was a ruler of Ma'at, and there was no wrong in calm that was hidden from the eyes of Pharaoh. When there was no one of gentle guile or strong in his evil, still did I sit in judgment upon him, and while he slept the night before, I listened to the words he repeated to himself, with which he hoped to bewilder me. Then, when he came before me in audience, I said to him, "Listen, and I shall speak your words for you." Then a great fear would fall upon him, for he knew that I heard the words of his heart, as though he had spoken them in a loud voice upon a still evening. Then would I give judgment upon him. As time passed, I saw that Den was following the patterns of my life, as the lotus flowers like another, and that in her hands the crook and flail were secure. So when I was 47, I went to live with Sheshet, to pass the gentle evening of my days at Nektan. Mirrored in its lotus pools, the old palace of the south stood upon the east bank of the river, and my windows opened to the evening sun. Though Sheshet was their vizier, the people of the south came to him with their troubles, as if he were a temple counselor. He went among the people of the little farm. He went among the people of the little farmlands, and a man who told him that the lettuces in his garden were wilting felt, while they talked together, that they were the two masters of great vineyards. The linen weavers knew that he understood the troubles brought by a roughened finger in the setting of the fine threads upon their looms, and the soldiers loved him, for his words would unseal the wine of laughter. His people called him Neyah, the great-hearted, for they flourished under the sun of his compassion. We talked together of many things that are far away from earth. We explored the crystal uplands of clear thought and scaled on-footed pinnacles when we could capture some image of the spirit with words. In old papyrus rolls of forgotten songmakers we heard whispers of lovers whose bodies were long dead, yet whose memory still walked through leafy avenues. In the evening he would call for his musicians, who plucked from their strings the melodies of his thoughts. Strange music, clear-cut as shadows on the wall, its harmony spaced into measures meticulous as the lines on the pillar that marks the river's height. The silver of flutes wound through the green of harps, as brooks awake quiet pastures in valleyed hills. The spirit of Neyah shared my sleep, and his son was beside me through the day. When Sheshet had become vizier of the south, he caused a new temple to be built at Nektan upon the west bank, opposite to the palace. When it was ready to be made a place of peace, I spoke these words to the assembled people. Hear my voice, for the gods have made my tongue of silver, so that your hearts shall echo to its words as a bell echoes to the striking of a hammer. Remember always that the things which befall you are but your own actions reflected in a true mirror. No flail shall fall upon your back unless your hand has been upraised unjustly. Your belly shall not be taut with hunger, nor your throat parched with thirst, unless you have suffered another to know these things. You shall not journey across the wilderness in darkness unless you have closed your eyes to the light when it would have shone upon you. Your feet shall not bleed because of the stones upon your path, unless you have heeded not the voice of one who told you to make sandals for yourselves of your own wisdom. You shall not cry upon the wind for loneliness until you have been false to one who was your proven friend. You shall not fear death looming in your path unless you have denied the glory of its continents. Think only this of anything you do. Would I be glad if this were done to me? Then shall you travel swiftly in the boat of time along the river of eternal life, and set no course upon the stream of tears that flows through the caverns of the underworld. Chapter 6. The Heart of Calm. Up and down the great river of calm our temples stand like an avenue of torches. The voices of priests are heard in the sanctuaries, and the courtyards whisper with the feet of sandal bearers. But the priests of our children are still in the bodies of children. So on the 7th day of the 7th month of each year, all children who are in their 7th year are taken to the temples for the seer to look upon their gateways. And children whose bodies sit lightly upon them, and who in the great journey travel along the pathways of a priest, return to the temple for their further training when they are 12 years old, so that in their turn they can become the lifeblood of the heart of calm. Those amongst them who remember their dreams clearly, or who have a mark within them which shows that before they were born they had begun to fly, are taught how to grow stronger wing feathers, so that they can become dreamers of true dreams. They shall become pathfinders of the jackal, and when their gateway of sleep is as an ever open portal through which the light shines, they shall lead others through it, through the dusk of earth, even as Anubis had led them across the great causeway. Those children who, when they sit beside the river looking upon bright water, see it coloured more vividly than dreams, are trained to leave their bodies and to go on to and fro over the earth while they describe what they see upon their wandering, as though they saw them pictured in a polished bowl, or in a mirror, or upon the silver faces of their pyramids. They shall become the lookers, who, swiftly as clear-sighted birds, watch over our country, so that under their protection its tranquility is undisturbed. And among them there are those who shall become lookers of Ma'at, whose tongues speak while they travel to the far realms of the spirit. Those children, under whose eyes life beats strongly, are trained until they become priests of Ptah, and can cause life to flow down through their gateways. Just as the water carriers fill their jars at the river to restore the young green to their gardens, so shall these healers draw water from the river of life to give it to those who thirst for it. And they shall give health to our people, even as the inundation brings life to our fields. Among them are those who follow the leadership of the hawk. When in their hands they hold the sword of a Horus priest, they shall sever the bonds of those who are enchained in the furthest caverns of the underworld. And about evil they shall put a noose of fire. They shall war with the great overlords of Set, and with the power beat down the challenge of destroying eyes. Those children who see through the dark curtain of their lids are trained as seers, but only those who are in men's bodies are chosen for this. For this is the hardest of all line of temple training, and the body must be a strong citadel to encompass this burnishing of the spirit without being injured. Their bodies cannot be unto them as a gentle pavilion, for while they are awake they see those things that other men see only while they sleep, and though they return to their bodies, they cannot escape from the multitude of the beyond earths or from the demons of the underworld. When they have worn the scarlet feather of Ma'at, there shall be no curtains drawn to them on earth. They shall look upon a sick man and know what has caused his sickness. They shall look upon a man and see his ba as though he were cloaked in colour, and so know the tempering of his heart. They shall see the memory of old evil, which stains the place where that evil was done. And they shall see where an ancient wrong or a forgotten sorrow has left its mark upon a room, clearer than bloodstains upon a floor. They shall see men who walk bodiless as clearly as if they were clothed in flesh, whether such men are free in their spirit, or bound to earth by their own ignorance, or by a condemnation. They shall read the records that are held in stone, that is unscribed yet, which has been made lively with memory, and can bear witness to those who can give it speech. And this power they share with the locusts of Ma'at. And they shall fight mightily against the hosts of darkness, for there shall be warriors of the scarlet upon earth, and away from earth, and seeing truth they shall fight for it in splendor. These legions of the winged ones, who in their several ways have trained their will, shall join that mighty panoply of spears, which protects us from the black destroying wave that would engulf us in the name of Set. How very timely this book is. So, I'm coming to the last chapter, which I shall do soon.